Oliver Wynter will tell us about his amazing walk from the north coast to the south coast. Thank you.
Yeah, we did this walk coast to coast from Gurner's Head to Penzance yesterday. And probably in keeping with being the lowest tech of the field trips, this is also the lowest tech of presentations, and I'm just going to run with Hadrian's picture and just read out some notes. So we walked from Gurner's Head, which is on the north coast, to Penzance in the company of John Brooks, who's a National Trust countryside manager, ecologist and historian, and Jeff Pooley, who's my old geology teacher from the Humphrey Davy Grammar School in Penzance. And I think a walk is always a personal journey. Preparing for this field trip has been a very personal journey for me. Meeting and trying out various routes with John Brooks, Jeff, Teresa, my brother Tom, and my friend Justine. Probably walked across, and Hadrian as well actually, I think about 5 times, trying out different routes. I wanted to introduce people on the convention who maybe hadn't been here before to the best experience of this place. And it felt a bit like preparing a many-course meal with complementary flavours of sweet and sour, intimate, expansive or enclosing. And I felt there were 2 slightly opposing threads to the walk. One was the experiential, which is a largely individual process. And 2, the informative, where we tried to help participants understand some of what we were passing through. Obviously you can't be entirely in your own head experiencing a landscape if somebody's talking to you. So with Jeff Pooley we were introduced to the underlying geology, much of which has been covered very well, especially by Robin Shale, that form Penwith with its shales, dolomites, granites, mineralisation, erosion, changes of sea level and climate that has brought this landscape to its present appearance. With John we went into the changing ecology of Penwith, from barren tundra conditions of the last ice age 10,000 years ago, through its increasing forestation, and then the deforestation by man, domestication and farming of the land, and now the growing over of once open landscapes. And we also went into cliff grazing management, which has resulted in the return of our native symbol, the chough. And then there was the walking. Ian talked the other day about the commons, communes, communal and community, and sort of gave out a challenge. What are we doing about it? What are the commons and what will they be? And I just had this slight idea. We did walk across a common on the way back. But I think to walk is to commune with nature, and walking through a landscape seems to be a very human thing. It seems that our bodies are built to walk, and the rhythm of walking feels beneficial and calming and stimulating. And to walk and talk through a landscape is deeply satisfying. So what makes one like one place more than another, one landscape more than another? Is it the familiar, or is it some poetry we read? Why the cultural change, as Ian pointed out, from regarding the wilds as barren and frightening, to where we see them now as beautiful and pure? And I think it comes down to knowing a landscape, and to knowing a landscape is to love it, and to come to know it. It's an intimacy with place which is satisfying. Particularly with John, we went into very great depths of knowledge in individual bits of it. Humans have been here for possibly 20,000 years. Dolomite axes dating to that time have been traced to quarries at Kinnigic near St. Just and St. Michael's Mount. So why did we come here in what must have been a very cold and inhospitable place? Obviously it was partly to hunt and eat, but also I think it is simply our nature to want to walk and be curious. And I wanted to share the things I most enjoyed from the walk, which really came from John Brooks. He was talking about the return of the choughs, and there had been attempts at reintroducing the chough, largely unsuccessful because captive choughs don't know the landscape anymore. They don't know how to teach the young how to find the necessary food. And so the reintroduction actually came about because of grazing, allowing the ground cover on the cliffs to be low enough that the chough, which has quite a short beak, could get down to the invertebrates that it needs to eat. And also because these choughs came in, I believe, from Ireland and Brittany, obviously similar landscapes and similar ecologies where the mother bird would be able to teach the young birds how to find them. And one thing I've never noticed myself, I have seen the choughs. You can quite easily see them along stretches of the north coast here. And John said a very particular thing that's a sign that choughs are around is if you see that there's cow manure and it's been broken, it's often the choughs, they spread it around to get the invertebrates out of it. And the other thing he said, which I particularly liked, he was discussing the symbiosis of species and how the ecology of a particular place, everything is interlocked. And he was talking about a large blue butterfly, the larvae of which are taken underground by ants. And the larvae then proceed to eat the grubs of the ant. And yet the ants are eating a sugary larval secretion from the butterfly larvae. Very odd symbiosis. But the butterfly is obviously utterly dependent on the ant, and they're both utterly dependent on the habitat, and the habitat has to be kept in a certain state for them to survive there. And then we had a very celebratory moment on the walk. Years ago I lived at a farm called Tremedda, and we still did a certain amount of harvesting in the field where we'd go in and bring in bales of straw. And the farmer's wife would bring out a great tea for us to eat in the field, and it's just fantastic to have tea in the landscape. So I got my friend Kath Wilkins to meet us on Madryn Carn with 2 kettles and some stoves, and she made us tea. You know, and yeah, it was fantastic. And the last part I thought I'd just say, which was quite funny, is you know, as a leader of the walk, it's not quite as relaxing as just going on a walk or taking people, because you're constantly having to go ahead to check people go the right way and lag back to check people haven't gone the wrong way. Now, also on this walk, I realised we were going to pass no toilets for about 7 hours. So at a certain point, I sort of suggested that if the women would like to hang back, this would be a moment when they might like, or just find cover. But I found this conflicted with my role of trying to keep people on the straight path. And I'd see them wandering off, and I'd go, it's not that way, and they'd be just trying to quietly go and have a think. So that was rather embarrassing. And I did also say that I had a trowel and toilet paper in case someone had that need, and nobody had the nerve to ask me. So on that note, thank you.